There is a hidden cost to being available to everyone, and most people discover it only after their peace has already disappeared. You open your door because you want to be kind. You welcome people because you do not want to appear selfish. You keep answering calls, listening to endless problems, forgiving repeated disrespect, and making room for people who constantly disturb your peace. At first, it feels like generosity, but eventually you may realize something has changed. Your home no longer feels like a place of rest. Your mind feels crowded. Your prayer becomes difficult. Your family becomes uncomfortable. And the peace you once took for granted slowly begins to disappear. The question is not whether you should love people. Of course you should. The deeper question is this: does loving everyone require giving everyone access to you? The answer is no. There are people you can forgive without inviting them back into your private space. There are people you can pray for without allowing them to influence your family. There are people you can treat with kindness while still maintaining a firm boundary. And there are situations where saying no is not cruelty, it is wisdom. Stay with this entire message because the final point may be the one most people misunderstand. The greatest danger is not always obvious. Sometimes the person who affects your peace the most does not arrive looking dangerous. They may appear friendly, charming, needy, entertaining, or even familiar. That is why discernment matters. The first type of person you should be careful about welcoming into your home is the person who consistently brings chaos wherever they go. Every visit becomes an argument. Every conversation becomes gossip. Every gathering becomes drama. They carry conflicts from one relationship into another, and eventually your home becomes another stage for their problems. You may tell yourself, they are just going through a difficult time, and compassion is important. But compassion does not mean allowing someone else's disorder to become the atmosphere of your household. If someone repeatedly leaves your home filled with tension, anger, gossip, or confusion, you have to pay attention. The second type is the person who consistently disrespects your boundaries. They arrive without warning. They demand your attention. They ignore your requests. They criticize your choices. They invade private conversations. They make themselves comfortable with things you have clearly said are not acceptable. The problem is not one isolated mistake. The problem is a repeated pattern. When you constantly allow your boundaries to be crossed, you teach people that your boundaries do not really matter, and eventually you may begin ignoring your own limits as well. The third type is the person who constantly pulls you away from your values. Every person has influences that shape their thinking. The conversations you repeatedly hear, the attitudes you repeatedly encounter, and the behaviors you repeatedly tolerate can gradually affect your own choices. That is why you must be careful about what becomes normal inside your home. If someone repeatedly encourages dishonesty, impurity, hatred, cruelty, addiction, resentment, or destructive behavior, you should not pretend that their influence has no effect. Simply because they are pleasant to you, you do not have to hate them. You simply have to recognize that not every influence belongs in your home. The fourth type is the person who uses your kindness against you. These are the people who always need something. They need your time. They need your money. They need your attention. They need another favor. They need another chance. And because you have a generous heart, you keep saying yes. But there comes a moment when generosity becomes unhealthy availability. Being available 24 hours a day does not make you more loving. Sometimes it simply makes you exhausted. You cannot pour endlessly from an empty heart. And when you never say no, people may begin to believe that your time, energy, home, and attention are resources they are entitled to. They are not. The fifth type is perhaps the most difficult to recognize. The person who appears harmless but consistently disturbs your peace. Not everyone who causes damage does so through obvious aggression. Some people leave you feeling anxious after every conversation. Some make you question yourself. Some constantly criticize you while pretending to help. Others create subtle divisions between family members. You may not be able to explain exactly what feels wrong, but you notice the pattern. This is where discernment becomes essential. Discernment is not paranoia. It does not mean assuming everyone is evil. It means paying attention to patterns, behavior, consequences, and the spiritual and emotional atmosphere created by relationships. A wise person does not make decisions based only on appearances. And there is another important truth. Your home does not have to be accessible to everyone simply because your heart is compassionate. Your home is personal. It is where your family rests. It is where children learn. It is where important conversations happen. It is where you pray, recover, and build your life. Therefore, who enters that environment matters. This does not mean living in fear. It means living with wisdom. You can welcome people without becoming responsible for their entire lives. You can forgive without restoring the same level of access. You can be generous without allowing yourself to be exploited. You can love someone while recognizing that distance may be necessary. Sometimes the most spiritual thing you can say is, "You are forgiven, but this boundary remains." And perhaps this is the hidden cost of being too available. When you constantly make room for everyone else, you eventually leave no room for yourself, your family, your responsibilities, your prayer, or your peace. Your availability should have limits. Your kindness should have wisdom. Your home should have boundaries. And your heart should have discernment. Do not confuse being a good person with being accessible to everyone. Goodness does not require you to tolerate endless disrespect. Compassion does not require you to ignore destructive patterns. Forgiveness does not require you to surrender healthy boundaries. Sometimes protecting peace requires closing a door, not because you hate the person outside it, but because you finally understand the responsibility you have toward the people and values inside. So before you invite someone into your home, look beyond their words, look at their patterns, look at the atmosphere they create, look at how you and your family feel after they leave. Look at whether their presence strengthens what is good or repeatedly introduces confusion, temptation, conflict, and disorder. And most importantly, do not be afraid to practice wise boundaries. Because your home is more than four walls. It is an environment. It is a place where your family is shaped. It is a place where peace should be protected. And sometimes protecting that peace begins with learning that not everyone deserves unlimited access to you. Not everyone deserves access to your home. And understanding this does not make you selfish, judgmental, or unkind. Your home is one of the few places in life where you should be able to experience peace, privacy, safety, and restoration. It is where you step away from the pressures of the outside world, spend time with the people you love, reflect on your choices, and regain your strength. Because of that, you should not treat access to your home as something that must automatically be given to everyone who asks for it. Many people struggle with this because they confuse kindness with unlimited availability. They believe that saying no makes them a bad person. They worry about disappointing others, appearing unfriendly, or being accused of not caring. So they keep opening the door, even when their instincts tell them something is wrong. They continue welcoming people who bring arguments, gossip, disrespect, manipulation, temptation, or emotional exhaustion into their environment. Over time, what began as kindness can become a serious burden. Your home should not become a place where everyone else's problems are deposited. There is a difference between helping someone and allowing someone to repeatedly disturb your peace. You can listen to a person without allowing them unlimited access to your private life. You can forgive someone without inviting them into your home every week. You can pray for someone without becoming responsible for everything they choose to do. Compassion does not require the removal of every boundary. Sometimes the people who demand the most access are the very people who respect your boundaries the least. They may show up unexpectedly, expect your attention whenever they want it, criticize your decisions, or become offended when you finally say no. If you constantly reward this behavior with access, they may begin to believe that your boundaries are negotiable. They are not. A healthy boundary is not a punishment. It is a form of wisdom. It tells others where your responsibility ends and theirs begins. You are responsible for the atmosphere you allow into your home. You are responsible for protecting the peace of your family. You are responsible for recognizing when a relationship is becoming unhealthy. This does not mean assuming that everyone is dangerous. It means refusing to ignore patterns simply because you want to see the best in people. Sometimes your desire to be kind can make you overlook what is happening right in front of you. Pay attention to how people behave when they do not get what they want. Pay attention to whether they respect your privacy. Pay attention to whether they bring constant conflict into your household. Pay attention to whether you feel drained, anxious, angry, or unsettled after every interaction. These signs do not automatically mean someone is evil, but they may indicate that stronger boundaries are necessary. Your home should be a place where what is good can grow. Peace needs protection. Families need privacy. Children need stability. Relationships need healthy limits. And you need space to breathe without constantly managing somebody else's expectations. Never be ashamed to say, "Not today." Never feel guilty for protecting your time. Never believe that you must open your door simply because someone knocks. You can be loving and still be selective. You can be generous and still have boundaries. You can forgive and still maintain distance. The goal is not to live with fear. The goal is to live with wisdom. When you understand that not everyone deserves access to your home, you begin to understand something even deeper. Access to you is a privilege, not an obligation. Protect your peace, protect your family, and make your home a place where what matters most can flourish. The hidden cost of being too available is something many people do not recognize until they are completely exhausted. At first, always being there for others can feel like a virtue. You answer every call, respond to every message, open your door whenever someone asks, listen to every problem, and make yourself available whenever someone needs you. You may believe this is what it means to be caring, generous, and compassionate, but when availability has no boundaries, something begins to change. You slowly stop having enough time, energy, and peace for yourself. Being available to everyone can create the illusion that you are needed all the time. People become accustomed to your immediate response. They expect you to solve problems, provide emotional support, change your plans, and sacrifice your comfort whenever they want something. Eventually, your kindness can become an expectation rather than something appreciated. This is where the hidden cost begins. Every time you say yes when you actually want to say no, you give away a small piece of your peace. Every time you allow someone to interrupt your responsibilities without a genuine reason, you give away your attention. Every time you tolerate disrespect because you are afraid of confrontation, you teach yourself that keeping someone else comfortable is more important than protecting your own boundaries. Eventually, resentment can begin to grow. You may start feeling frustrated with people who constantly need you, even though you were the one who repeatedly made yourself available. You may become emotionally exhausted because you are carrying problems that were never yours to carry. You may begin avoiding your own responsibilities because you are constantly responding to everyone else's demands. The problem is not kindness. The problem is the absence of limits. Healthy relationships require boundaries because people need to understand that your time and energy are not unlimited resources. You are allowed to rest. You are allowed to have private time. You are allowed to focus on your family. You are allowed to turn off your phone. You are allowed to decline an invitation. You are allowed to say, I cannot help with this right now. None of these things make you selfish. In fact, learning to establish boundaries can make your relationships healthier because it removes the expectation that you must constantly sacrifice yourself. People who genuinely respect you will understand that you have responsibilities, limitations, and your own life to live. But when someone becomes angry simply because you are no longer constantly available, that reaction can reveal something important. They may not have valued your presence as much as they valued what your availability provided for them. You should also understand that being too available can weaken discernment. When you constantly allow people into your personal space, you may stop noticing how their behavior affects your environment. You become so focused on helping that you overlook the tension, drama, negativity, or disrespect that follows them. Your availability should have purpose. There are moments when helping others is exactly what you should do. There are times when someone genuinely needs support, encouragement, or compassion, but generosity should be guided by wisdom. You cannot save everyone, solve every problem, or carry every burden. Sometimes the strongest act of kindness is stepping back. When you stop being available to everyone, you may initially feel guilty. You might wonder whether people will misunderstand you, but with time, you begin to discover something valuable. Your peace returns, your attention becomes clearer, your relationships become more intentional. You have more energy for the people and responsibilities that truly matter. Being unavailable does not mean being uncaring. It means understanding that your life has limits. Your time matters. Your home matters. Your family matters. Your responsibilities matter. Your peace matters. And when you learn to protect these things, you stop measuring your worth by how much you can do for everyone else. You realize that you do not have to be constantly accessible to prove that you are a good person. You can love people without constantly serving their demands. You can care without being consumed. You can help without destroying yourself. The real freedom comes when you understand that saying no to unnecessary demands can sometimes be a powerful way of saying yes to the life, peace, responsibilities, and relationships you were entrusted to protect. People who constantly bring chaos into your life can be difficult to recognize because they do not always appear destructive at first. Sometimes they are friendly, charming, generous, or even people you have known for a long time. The problem becomes visible through patterns. Wherever they go, conflict seems to follow. Conversations turn into arguments. Simple situations become complicated, and peaceful moments somehow become filled with tension. When you repeatedly allow this kind of influence into your home, the consequences can become much greater than you expected. Chaos does not always arrive loudly. Sometimes it comes through constant gossip, unnecessary criticism, personal drama, manipulation, arguments, or emotional pressure. A person may enter your home and immediately begin talking about someone else. They may bring stories designed to create suspicion or resentment. They may complain about everyone around them and encourage you to take sides. At first, you may simply listen because you want to be supportive. But eventually, their problems begin occupying your thoughts long after they have left. This is one of the hidden dangers of constantly welcoming chaos. The person leaves, but the atmosphere they created can remain. Your home should be a place where you can recover from the pressures of the outside world. If every visit leaves you emotionally drained, angry, confused, or anxious, that pattern deserves your attention. You should not ignore the effect someone repeatedly has on your peace simply because you feel obligated to keep welcoming them. Some people are constantly surrounded by conflict because they never take responsibility for their own actions. Every problem is someone else's fault. Every disagreement is someone else's betrayal. Every failed relationship is caused by another person. When you spend enough time around this mindset, you can gradually become part of the same cycle without realizing it. You may find yourself discussing people you never used to discuss. You may become involved in arguments that were never yours. You may begin defending positions you never cared about. Slowly, someone else's chaos becomes part of your daily life. That is why boundaries are necessary. You can have compassion for someone who is struggling without allowing their constant disorder to take over your household. You can listen without becoming involved. You can encourage someone to seek a healthy solution without becoming their permanent source of emotional rescue. There is also a difference between someone experiencing a temporary crisis and someone who consistently creates crises. Everyone goes through difficult seasons. Everyone can make mistakes. Everyone deserves patience. The concern is not occasional difficulty. The concern is a repeated pattern in which chaos follows the person everywhere, and they refuse to change their behavior. When that pattern becomes clear, wisdom requires you to respond differently. You do not need to insult them. You do not need to condemn them. You do not need to create unnecessary conflict. Sometimes the most powerful response is simply reducing access. Invite them less often. Keep conversations shorter. Refuse to participate in gossip. Change the subject when conversations become destructive. Clearly communicate what behavior you will not tolerate in your home. Your boundaries may disappoint someone, but disappointment is not the same thing as wrongdoing. You are allowed to protect the environment of your home. You are allowed to decide that your family does not need constant arguments around them. You are allowed to choose conversations that encourage peace instead of resentment. You are allowed to recognize that not every relationship deserves unlimited access to your private space. Remember, protecting your peace does not mean believing that you are better than anyone else. It means recognizing your responsibility for the atmosphere you help create. A peaceful home does not happen by accident. It requires choices. Choose carefully who you allow close. Choose carefully what conversations you permit. Choose carefully which behaviors you normalize. And when someone repeatedly brings chaos into your environment, have the courage to establish distance. Sometimes closing the door to unnecessary chaos is not an act of rejection. It is an act of wisdom. And when you protect your peace, you create more room for love, stability, prayer, family, and everything that genuinely deserves a place in your home. People who disrespect your values can have a deeper influence on your life than you may realize. Your values are the principles that guide your decisions, shape your relationships, and determine the kind of environment you want to create around yourself. They may include honesty, faith, family, respect, responsibility, self-control, kindness, or integrity. These values are not simply ideas you talk about, they influence the way you live. That is why allowing someone who repeatedly mocks, attacks, or undermines those values into your closest environment can gradually create confusion and weaken the standards you have worked hard to establish. Disrespect does not always appear as an obvious attack. Sometimes it begins with jokes. Someone makes fun of something you take seriously, and you laugh because you do not want to create tension. Later, the comments become more frequent. They question your choices, criticize your beliefs, encourage behavior you have clearly rejected, or make you feel foolish for maintaining certain standards. Because each incident seems small, you may continue ignoring it. But repeated disrespect can eventually become a pattern. The danger is that constant exposure can make unhealthy behavior seem normal. When someone repeatedly challenges your values inside your own home, you may begin defending yourself instead of simply living according to your principles. Conversations become arguments. Simple decisions become debates. You feel pressured to explain why you believe what you believe or why you have chosen to live differently. You should not have to constantly defend the right to maintain your own standards in your own home. This does not mean that everyone around you must agree with everything you believe. Healthy relationships can include differences of opinion. People can disagree respectfully and still care about each other. The problem begins when disagreement turns into contempt, pressure, ridicule, or repeated attempts to make you abandon your principles. There is a major difference between someone saying, "I see this differently," and someone constantly trying to convince you that your values are worthless. The first can be healthy conversation. The second can become destructive influence. You should especially pay attention when someone encourages you to behave in ways that contradict the person you are trying to become. They may encourage dishonesty because everyone does it. They may encourage disrespect because you should not care what people think. They may pressure you into unhealthy habits because they want you to participate with them. Over time, repeated pressure can wear down even strong convictions. That is why boundaries matter. You do not need to force your values onto other people, but you have every right to protect them within your own life and home. You can say, "I respect that you see things differently, but I am not comfortable with that behavior in my home." That statement is not hateful. It is clear. People who genuinely respect you may not share every belief you have, but they will respect your right to make your own choices. Your home should not become a place where you feel pressured to abandon your principles simply to keep someone else comfortable. There is also a lesson here about the people you allow closest to you. Ask yourself what happens after spending time with certain individuals. Do you feel encouraged to become better, or do you feel pressured to compromise? Do you leave conversations with greater clarity or greater confusion? Do their words strengthen your commitment to what matters, or slowly convince you that your standards are unnecessary? These questions can reveal more than appearances ever will. Protecting your values does not require arrogance. It requires consistency. You can remain kind without becoming passive. You can remain respectful without surrendering your convictions. You can love someone without allowing their behavior to define the atmosphere of your home. Sometimes the healthiest boundary is simply refusing to participate. You do not have to argue about every disagreement. You do not have to convince everyone. You do not have to defend yourself endlessly. Sometimes you can calmly step away, change the subject, limit access, or decide that certain conversations and behaviors no longer belong in your private space. Your values are part of the foundation of your life. If you allow people to repeatedly undermine that foundation, you may eventually find yourself living according to pressure rather than conviction. Protect what you believe is worth protecting. Guard the standards that bring stability to your life. And remember that respect does not require agreement. The people who deserve a place close to you are not necessarily those who believe exactly what you believe. They are the people who can disagree without destroying your peace, challenge you without humiliating you, and respect your boundaries even when they choose a different path. Your home should be a place where your values can be lived, not a place where you are constantly pressured to abandon them. Discernment is not hatred. Learning to recognize who should have access to your life, your time, your family, and your home does not mean that you believe you are better than anyone else. It means you understand that love and wisdom must work together. You can care about someone deeply and still recognize that certain behaviors, influences, or patterns require boundaries. In fact, sometimes genuine compassion requires you to stop enabling what is unhealthy. Many people struggle with discernment because they are afraid of being judged as unkind. They think that if they create distance from someone, they must secretly hate that person. But this is a misunderstanding of what healthy boundaries actually mean. A boundary does not declare that someone has no value. It simply establishes what you are willing to allow into your personal space. You can forgive someone without trusting them immediately. You can pray for someone without inviting them into your home. You can wish someone well without giving them unlimited access to your life. These things can exist together. Hatred wants destruction. Discernment seeks wisdom. When you practice discernment, you are not automatically assuming that someone has bad intentions. Instead, you are paying attention to patterns. You notice how a person treats others. You notice how they respond when they are told no. You notice whether they respect your privacy. You notice whether they repeatedly bring conflict, pressure, manipulation, or negativity into your environment. One bad day does not define a person. One mistake does not necessarily reveal someone's character. Everyone has moments of weakness. Everyone needs patience. Discernment is about recognizing consistent patterns rather than condemning someone based on a single incident. This distinction is extremely important. Without discernment, kindness can become naivety. You may continue trusting someone who repeatedly violates your boundaries simply because you want to believe the best about them. You may keep opening your door because you feel guilty about saying no. You may continue giving opportunities to someone who has demonstrated again and again that they do not respect them. That is not necessarily love. Sometimes it is simply an inability to establish boundaries. Real compassion does not require you to ignore reality. If someone repeatedly creates conflict in your home, you can limit their visits. If someone constantly disrespects your values, you can choose not to engage in certain conversations. If someone manipulates your generosity, you can stop providing what they have learned to take for granted. None of these choices require anger or hatred. They require clarity. You also do not need to explain every boundary to everyone. Sometimes people will misunderstand your decision. They may accuse you of changing. They may say you are becoming distant. They may remind you of everything they have done for you. But if a boundary is necessary, you do not need permission from everyone to establish it. A peaceful person is not someone who keeps everyone happy. A peaceful person is someone who knows what deserves access to their attention. Discernment also means examining yourself. Before deciding that another person is the problem, ask whether your own expectations are reasonable. Ask whether you have communicated clearly. Ask whether you are reacting emotionally or responding wisely. Ask whether the situation requires distance or simply better communication. This prevents discernment from becoming suspicion. The goal is not to walk through life believing that everyone is dangerous. The goal is to stop ignoring obvious patterns simply because you are afraid of making difficult decisions. You can remain compassionate while becoming wiser. You can forgive while maintaining boundaries. You can love someone while choosing distance. You can respect another person's dignity without giving them unlimited access to your private life. This is especially important when it comes to your home. Your home is not a public space. You have the right to decide who enters, what behavior is acceptable, and what kind of atmosphere you want to maintain. Do not confuse a closed door with a closed heart. Sometimes a closed door simply means you are protecting what is inside. Discernment allows you to make that decision without hatred, revenge, or bitterness. It allows you to say, I wish you well, but this relationship needs boundaries. That is not hatred, that is wisdom. And when wisdom guides your relationships, you can remain loving without becoming vulnerable to every influence that asks for access. Protecting your peace is more than simply avoiding stress. It is recognizing that the condition of your inner life affects the way you think, speak, make decisions, treat others, and live according to your deepest values. Peace should not be treated as something unimportant that can be sacrificed whenever someone demands your attention. There are moments when protecting your peace becomes a responsibility because constant conflict, unhealthy relationships, and destructive influences can slowly affect every part of your life. Many people believe that being a good person means keeping everyone happy. They answer every request, tolerate every behavior, and remain available even when they are exhausted. They allow arguments to continue because they are afraid of confrontation. They welcome people into their homes even when those visits repeatedly create tension. They remain silent when their values are mocked because they do not want to appear difficult. Eventually, they discover that trying to preserve everyone else's comfort has destroyed their own peace. But peace requires protection. Your spiritual life can be affected by the environment you repeatedly allow around you. When your mind is constantly occupied by arguments, resentment, gossip, fear, and unnecessary drama, it becomes harder to remain focused on what truly matters. Instead of reflecting carefully before responding, you begin reacting. Instead of praying, you worry. Instead of showing patience, you become irritated. Instead of focusing on gratitude, you become consumed by other people's problems. This is why boundaries can be important. A boundary is not an act of hatred. It is a decision about what you will permit to influence your life. You can love people without allowing their destructive behavior to dominate your home. You can forgive someone without giving them unlimited access. You can help someone without becoming responsible for every consequence of their choices. Protecting your peace also means being careful about what conversations you participate in. Not every argument deserves your response. Not every accusation requires an explanation. Not every piece of gossip needs your attention. Sometimes wisdom means refusing to participate in conversations that only create division. There is strength in being able to say, "I will not continue this conversation if it becomes disrespectful." There is strength in saying, "I cannot take this on right now." There is strength in deciding that your home will not become a place where constant conflict is welcomed. You should also remember that protecting your peace does not mean avoiding every difficult situation. Life will always contain challenges. Families will have disagreements. People will disappoint you. Responsibilities will sometimes become overwhelming. Spiritual growth itself can require difficult choices. Peace does not mean the absence of every problem. True peace means learning how to remain grounded even when problems exist. That is why protecting your peace requires discernment rather than fear. Do not become suspicious of everyone. Do not assume that every difficult person is harmful. Instead, observe patterns. Ask yourself whether a relationship consistently strengthens your character or weakens it. Ask whether certain interactions bring you closer to patience, wisdom, humility, and love, or whether they repeatedly pull you toward anger, resentment, and confusion. Your answers can reveal what needs to change. Sometimes protecting your peace means spending less time with certain people. Sometimes it means changing the way you communicate. Sometimes it means refusing to discuss certain subjects. Sometimes it means creating distance from environments that repeatedly encourage destructive behavior. These decisions may feel uncomfortable at first. You may feel guilty. You may wonder whether you are being selfish. But remember that you cannot give your best to your responsibilities when your mind and heart are constantly being drained by unnecessary conflict. Your peace is connected to how you serve others, how you care for your family, and how you live your values. When you protect it, you are not simply protecting yourself. You are protecting the quality of the life you are building. A peaceful home can become a place of encouragement. A peaceful mind can make better decisions. A peaceful heart can respond with patience instead of anger. A peaceful environment can give people room to grow, so do not apologize for wanting peace. Do not feel guilty for establishing reasonable boundaries. Do not believe that endless availability is proof of love. Sometimes the most responsible thing you can do is close the door to unnecessary chaos so that you can keep the door open to what truly deserves your attention. Protect your peace with wisdom. Guard your home with intention, choose your relationships carefully, and remember that peace is not something you should constantly surrender just because someone else refuses to respect boundaries. In the end, protecting your peace is not about becoming cold, distant, or unwilling to help others. It is about learning that your kindness needs wisdom, your availability needs boundaries, and your home needs protection. Not everyone who asks for access deserves unlimited access, and not every relationship needs to remain as close as it once was. You can forgive without reopening every door. You can love without allowing yourself to be used. You can pray for someone without carrying their problems as your own. You can wish someone well while choosing a healthier distance. Remember, your home should be more than a place where people enter and leave. It should be a place where peace is cultivated, where your family feels safe, where your values are respected, and where your spirit has room to become stronger. So be careful about what you allow into your environment. Pay attention to patterns, listen to wisdom, set boundaries without hatred, and protect your peace without guilt. You do not have to be available to everyone. You do not have to explain every no. You do not have to sacrifice your peace simply to keep someone else comfortable. Sometimes the strongest decision you can make is to close a door that constantly brings chaos so you can protect the peace waiting on the other side. Choose wisdom over pressure. Choose peace over unnecessary conflict. Choose discernment over fear, because when you protect the peace within your home and within your heart, you create space for what truly matters. And that is something worth protecting.